Welcome to Brown's Cooking Show. Thank you, everybody. This will be our first recorded post that goes out on our YouTube channel, Brown's Cooking Show on YouTube. So join us out there. We're actually going to do a pot roast today, so we're going to start this in the crock pot. This is a great dish that you can do first thing in the morning. Not much prep to it. Really easy to throw it together. You're going to see it's going to take me about 5 minutes to get it all ready. Actually have a nice cut of meat here that I got from Safeway on sale. It's actually a London broil, but it's a really big London broil. So I really want this meat to turn out really tender, so I'm going to put it in the crock pot as a pot roast. So we've just got it. We didn't trim it at all. We're just going to throw it right in there, right down on the... Okay, so we poured about half a bottle of beer in there. You can use the beer of your choice. It really doesn't matter. And then we're going to start throwing our vegetables in. And these are really rough cut vegetables. So first thing we're going to do is have our onions. So it's going to take about 1.5 large onions. And like I said, you're going to rough cut it. So you want some nice chunky pieces in there because this is going to cook all day while you're at work. And you want to make sure that you still have a little bit of onion in there. You don't really have to break it up much, just kind of cut it, toss it in there. With your 1 large onion, you're just going to cut it in half, cut it in thirds, drop it in there, cut it in thirds, drop it in there. Easy peasy. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to add some of our spices in. We're going to use some Italian seasoning. So no need to measure it. You're probably going to put 2 or 3 really good shakes in there. Garlic. Don't want to use the spoon side, want to use the sifting side. You're going to go for about 2 tablespoons of garlic in there. And then on your thyme, you really want to measure your thyme out because that can get a little over flavored in there. If you hold your palm out like that and hold it like that, whatever fills the inside of your palm, that's about a tablespoon. So we're gonna put about a tablespoon in there. And then of course we're gonna use our Montreal steak seasoning, which is just a 5-pepper blend, basically with some salt in it. And pour that right in there on top. You want about 3 tablespoons of that. No need for exact measurements. We're doing this really quickly. But you know, shake it about 3 or 4 good times to get it in there. Next thing we're going to use is we're actually going to use baby carrots instead of cutting up carrots for the sake of time. We want to get this done quickly so we can get out and get ready for work. So when you're going in the bag of carrots, we're looking for about 2.5 handfuls of carrots to go in there. So just reach in there and grab a couple of handfuls of carrots, drop them in there. And then the last ingredient, one of the last ingredients we're going to add in is our potatoes. Now these are just small potatoes. You can actually cut potatoes if you want, but for the sake of speed, I just want to go ahead and get them in there. And these little fingerling potatoes are great. So you want everything. Come over here and look at this pot. You want everything to cover up that roast. You notice when you look down in that pot, you don't see any roast down in there. Everything's underneath there because what's going to happen is the steam coming off of that roast is going to cook all the rest of these vegetables down for you. Okay, so we put that half a beer in there. The last 2 things we're going to add in is our beef stock. This is just simply a low sodium beef stock. So we're just going to open it up, and all we're going to do is go around the edges. Just right around the edge of the crock pot and get it down in there. We don't want to pour it directly on the middle because we don't want to move those spices around. We want those spices to be in there. And we're going to use this whole thing of beef broth down in there. And then you should start to see the beef broth. You can see how it's kind of coming up in the middle right there. You should kind of see it start to come up right there. And it's going to cover that up. And there you go. You got all your spices floating right there in the top of that beef broth. And then the last thing we're going to add in is a couple of Mexican chili pods. This is going to add a unique flavor profile to the roast. It's going to give you a little bit of heat in there, not much, but just a little bit. And that's it. At that point, you're done. You're ready to, you can do this in the morning before you leave for work. You saw it didn't take me about 5 minutes to put this together. And then you're out the door, and when you come home that night, when you walk in the door, you're gonna smell this thing cooking when you get home, because you're gonna set the cooker on a slow cook for about 8 hours. And when you come in the door, the aroma is just gonna knock you on your butt. All right, so we're just gonna put the lid on it, and we're going to turn it on. We're gonna select low cook for 8 hours. Set it and forget it. We're done. So we'll check back in later this evening when this is done and let you know what it looks like. We'll pull it out of there, and I'll tell you what, that roast, you won't even need a knife to cut it. It'll just pull apart with your fork. And you've got everything in one pot right there ready to go. All you've got to do is pull it out the pot and have dinner. Dinner in 5 minutes. How can you do better than that? Stay tuned. We'll be back in a little bit to show you what it looks like. All right, well, welcome back to Brown's Cooking Show. Through the magic of television, we've actually had the roast in the crock pot for 8 hours. So the first thing we're gonna do is we put those chili peppers in there. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pull those out of there, because those are not something you wanna eat. We're just gonna put those off to the side. For right now, I'm just gonna pop them down here on the counter. We'll throw those away later. We just had those in there for a little bit of flavor. We're gonna pull those things out of there now first. And now we're gonna go ahead and pull the onions and the potatoes off the top. So I know that some people have questions. Why do you put the vegetables on top? Because in a lot of crock pot teachings and information you see about different crock pot recipes, it'll tell you to put the vegetables on the bottom. I don't do that because if you do, your carrots and your potatoes and your onions will end up really mushy, and it's like they've been on the bottom, they get the most heat. By putting them on the top, we're actually steaming them more than actually boiling them in the juices that we had down there. And you actually still end up with a little bit of texture to your carrots and your onions. So that's why we put those on the top and we put the roast down on the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and pull those out now and put them in a bowl, because we'll serve those up with the roast. So we're just pulling those out of there. We're just using a slotted spoon because we want to leave the juices down in there and the roast in those juices. So we're just pulling those off the top. You're not going to get 100% of them out of there, but get the majority of them out of there and go ahead and put them up in the bowl. Okay, so we got our tongs, we got our spoon. We're going to use our tongs and our spoon, kind of get underneath that roast in there and pull this out of there. Pull it up here on the cutting board. Let it drain just a minute before you pull it out, and then we're going to pull it right up there on the cutting board. The rest of our potatoes and our carrots are still down in there. Usually not any potatoes left. They tend to pull out pretty easily on the top, but some of your onions and your carrots will be down in that juices. We're going to reserve those juices because we're going to use them later on to cover the meat with. So I want you to look at this piece of meat. Pull the right knife out here. And then we want to let this rest for a few minutes before we cut it. But I want you to look. Just look at how tender that is. It's just, you don't even need a knife to cut it. It's just going to pull away. I mean, I'm using the back of the knife, the non-sharp side, and it's just pulling away. This is just soft as butter. You really don't need teeth to chew it. You could gum this to death and you'd be fine. You know, it's just gonna be that good. So we're gonna take a small break, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna plate this up for you and show you what it looks like plated up. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Brown's Cooking Show. We're now gonna plate up this beautiful pot roast. As you can see, I've pulled apart a little bit of this, and we're just gonna put that up in the middle of the plate. And just to show you, I'm just using the tongs here, and the meat on this just pulls apart. So we'll Put it right up there in the middle of the plate. Close the tongs up. Close the tongs up. There we go. All right. So now we're going to go in here and we're going to grab some of our corn, some of our carrots and our potatoes. And we're just going to put those up right there on the middle of the plate with the pot roast. Make sure you get some of those onions in there, some of those carrots. All right. And now we're going to use a ladle. A lot of people would say make a gravy out of this sauce. I don't really like to make a thick gravy for pot roast. I want to use just the juices that come off the pot roast. So just stir that up around in there with the ladle. Get a little ladle of that sauce and then just pour it right over the top of your pot roast. And that gives you a little bit of juices on the bottom there for stirring around. And there you go, a beautiful pot roast. You spend about 5 minutes on it in the morning getting it ready, getting it set up. 5 or 10 minutes prep time in the morning. Come back in the evening from work and it's already done and ready to go. All you gotta do is pull it out and plate it up. Great meal, plenty enough here to feed a family of 4 and have leftovers. By the way, makes really good enchiladas for the leftovers. So key special as to what might be coming next. But thank you everybody for watching this episode of Brown's Cooking Show. Try this recipe. We'll get it posted up on Brown's Cooking Show and get it posted up on Facebook. So thank you everybody. Have a good evening. Healthy eating.